Welcome back to Grim Histories, the channel that unearths the darkest, most fascinating secrets from history's shadowy corners. Today, we're venturing into a world of grim paradox, a life lived on the razor's edge between salvation and damnation. The life of a medieval executioner. Now, I bet you're picturing a grim figure, cloaked in shadow, the stench of death clinging to his ragged clothes. And you wouldn't be entirely wrong? But what if I told you that the man wielding the axe, the one who dealt out the king's justice, also possessed a surprisingly different skill set? What if I told you that many medieval executioners were surgeons? Can you believe it? The same hands that dispatched condemned souls to the afterlife also stitched up wounds, set broken bones, and even performed rudimentary surgeries. It seems almost darkly comical, doesn't it? A man condemned by society for taking life, also entrusted with saving it. This isn't some fictional twist. Historical records, though scarce, hint at this bizarre duality. Consider the unique knowledge required for both professions. An executioner needed a precise understanding of anatomy, where to strike to end a life quickly and efficiently. This same anatomical knowledge, though applied in a drastically different context, was vital for a surgeon. Think about it. The precise placement of a cut, the understanding of blood flow, the ability to work quickly and efficiently under pressure. These skills were transferable, albeit in a terrifyingly contrasting way. Why this overlap? One theory suggests a simple matter of practicality. In a time when qualified physicians were few and far between, particularly in smaller towns and villages, the executioner, often the only person with intimate knowledge of the human body, was the closest thing to a readily available medical professional. Their access to sharp instruments and their understanding of bodily functions made them a practical, if unsettling, choice. Imagine the scene. One moment, the executioner is overseeing a public hanging, the air thick with the smell of fear and blood. The next, he's tending to a farmer's broken leg in the dimly lit confines of his own humble dwelling. The transition from the gruesome spectacle of death to the quiet focus of healing, a chilling juxtaposition that speaks volumes about the stark realities of medieval life. The social stigma attached to the profession certainly wouldn't have helped. Executioners were often outcasts, shunned by society, living on the fringes of their communities. But this isolation might have inadvertently created an odd sort of protection. It might have given them a degree of autonomy, a space to practice their medical skills without the scrutiny that would have otherwise been heaped upon them. Of course, this is just one theory. The truth remains shrouded in the mists of time, lost in the gaps of incomplete records and the whispers of forgotten tales. But the very possibility, the idea of the hangman as both reaper and healer, forces us to confront the complexities of medieval life, the blurring lines between brutality and compassion, and the unexpected ways in which individuals found their place, or perhaps their niche, in a society steeped in both superstition and survival. So, we've established that medieval executioners weren't just mindless butchers, they were, in a twisted way, almost essential. But what was their actual social standing? Picture this. The year is 1348. The Black Death is ravaging Europe, leaving a trail of corpses in its wake. Amidst the chaos, fear, and death, one figure remains, the executioner. He's the man no one wants to be near, yet everyone needs. Can you imagine the sheer isolation? Imagine the weight of that social stigma, the constant fear of being shunned, even attacked. They were considered utterly unclean, touched by death itself. This wasn't just a matter of personal preference. Deep-seated superstitions and religious beliefs fueled this social ostracization. Many believed that interacting with an executioner, even indirectly, would bring bad luck or invite divine wrath. Their very presence was considered a curse. Think about it, the executioner was the one who dealt with the bodies, who often had to prepare them for burial or dispose of them in the most gruesome ways. In a time when disease was poorly understood and the fear of contagion was rampant, the executioner became a walking embodiment of death and decay. They weren't just feared. They were actively avoided, living on the fringes of society, often relegated to the most desolate corners of towns. Their houses were usually situated outside city walls, marking them as forever separate from the community. But here's where things get interesting and perhaps a bit darkly humorous. Despite this profound social stigma, executioners often enjoyed surprising privileges. It was a paradoxical existence, a twisted irony of the Middle Ages. Many records show that executioners were granted tax exemptions, and some even received free housing, a stark contrast to their outcast status. Why? Because despite the revulsion they inspired, their services were undeniably essential. They were, after all, the ones who maintained order, who dealt with the consequences of crime, and who, in a gruesome way, cleaned up the mess. The paradox deepens when we consider the executioner's role in a feudal system. They were essentially employed by the lord or the king, often holding a position of relative authority within their limited sphere of influence. This granted them a degree of power and, in some cases, even a measure of respect, albeit a far cry from the respect accorded to other officials. Their position was a necessary evil, a grim task that needed fulfilling. Consider the case of the executioner of Paris, a position that was hereditary for a time. While members of his family were undoubtedly despised by the general population, the position itself carried a measure of official recognition, even if it was tinged with revulsion. The family often held a monopoly on the grim profession, passing down not only the tools of their trade but also the social stigma that came with it. Their lineage was a strange mix of shame and power, a perverse inheritance in a society steeped in superstition and fear. Their social standing wasn't always consistent either. It varied greatly depending on the region and the specific circumstances. Some executioners might enjoy a degree of respect in a small community, while others might face complete ostracization. The line between revulsion and necessity was constantly blurred, making their lives a unique and often tragic reflection of the complexities of medieval society. So, the next time you think about medieval executioners, remember that they were more than just instruments of death. They were a complex social group, simultaneously feared and essential, ostracized, yet sometimes surprisingly privileged. Their existence was a grim testament to the contradictions and anxieties of the medieval world, a chilling reflection of a society grappling with order, justice, and the ever-present specter of death. We explored the surprisingly complex social standing of the medieval executioner, ostracized yet essential. Now, let's delve into the truly gruesome, the visceral reality of their daily, or rather occasional tasks. Forget the sanitized depictions in modern media. The reality was far more visceral, far more interesting. Imagine the scene. A blustery November day in 14th century Paris. The air hangs heavy with the stench of wood smoke and something far less pleasant, the anticipation of a public execution. The condemned, perhaps a thief, a murderer, or even a heretic, is led to the scaffold. But before we get to the dramatic climax, let's talk about the tools of the trade. The executioner wasn't just some brute with an axe. He was a craftsman, a specialist in his grim profession. His kit would vary depending on the crime and the local customs. But some common elements included the maiden, a type of guillotine precursor, its heavy blade a terrifying testament to its purpose. Axes, of course, were essential, meticulously sharpened and balanced for a swift, clean blow. For hangings, sturdy ropes were vital, carefully chosen to withstand the weight of the condemned. And let's not forget the smaller, yet equally horrifying, instruments used for torture pincers, thumbscrews, the rack. The very names send shivers down the spine, don't they? But the tools themselves were only part of the equation. The ritual surrounding the execution was just as crucial. It wasn't just a quick dispatch. It was a public spectacle, a grim performance designed to reinforce the power of the law and, perhaps more importantly, to instill fear in the hearts of the onlookers. The executioner, in his dark, often hooded attire, became a figure of both dread and morbid fascination. The methods varied widely across Europe. In some regions, beheading was the preferred method for the nobility, while hanging was more common for common criminals. Burning at the stake was reserved for heretics and other particularly heinous offenders. Each method carried its own symbolic weight, each a carefully choreographed display of justice, or at least the medieval understanding of it. Can you imagine the sheer psychological pressure on the executioner? The weight of the community's judgment, the chilling silence before the blow, the screams and gasps of the crowd. It must have been a truly harrowing experience, that would leave its mark long after the last body was removed from the scaffold. And then there's the macabre aftermath. The body of the executed wasn't simply discarded, it became part of a twisted economy. Body parts, often believed to possess medicinal properties, were sold to apothecaries and physicians, a dark testament to the era's rudimentary understanding of medicine. Skulls were sometimes used as drinking vessels, a morbid reminder of mortality. It was a grim business, one that extended far beyond the actual moment of execution. The executioner, therefore, wasn't just a mere executioner. He was a vital part of a complex social and economic system, a grim underbelly of medieval life. His tools, his rituals, and even his post-execution duties all contributed to a chilling tapestry woven from fear, superstition, and the brutal realities of medieval justice. What a life! So, you think the life of a medieval executioner was just about swinging axes and tightening nooses? Think again, my friends. While the public spectacle of an execution certainly dominated their profession, it was far from the only string to their grim bow. The reality was far more versatile. Let's delve into the unexpectedly diverse and often utterly bizarre side hustles of these masters of mortality. Imagine the scene: a grim-faced man, his hands still stained faintly crimson from a recent hanging, now carefully examining a limping ox. Sounds unlikely? Not in the Middle Ages, while the primary role was undeniably the dispensing of justice, or rather, punishment. The executioner's skills and, shall we say, unique reputation often led to a surprising array of additional duties. Necessity, after all, is the mother of invention, even in the grimmest of professions. Their expertise with sharp instruments honed by years of professional practice made them surprisingly sought after in the realm of veterinary medicine. A broken leg on a prize steed? A festering wound on a farmer's ox? The executioner, with his intimate knowledge of anatomy and his unflinching approach to sharp objects, was often the only one brave or perhaps reckless enough to attempt treatment. Can you picture it? The same hands that had just severed a head now delicately stitching up a gash on a sheep. The juxtaposition is, frankly, unsettling. But the versatility didn't stop there. Death, as you might imagine, was a significant part of medieval life, and the executioner was often the first point of contact with its aftermath. Naturally, they were frequently called upon to deal with the bodies themselves. Think grave digging, but on a much larger and far less pleasant scale. Mass burials after plagues, the disposal of executed criminals. These tasks, grim as they were, fell squarely within the executioner's purview. They were, in essence, the medieval sanitation workers of the macabre. And then there's the matter of torture. While not always officially part of their duties, many executioners possessed the skills and the inclination for this particularly brutal aspect of medieval justice. The interrogation techniques often involved instruments that overlapped significantly with their execution tools. A twisted irony, perhaps, but hardly surprising given the era. The line between execution and torture was often blurred, a testament to the Dark Ages' brutal approach to law and order. But the most surprising aspect of their secondary occupations? Their sometimes surprisingly high social standing in a very specific, limited way. Because of their unique expertise, they often held a quasi-official position, a grim authority figure who also handled the unpleasant realities of medieval life. Their knowledge of anatomy, surprisingly, was sometimes valuable even in a more civilized context. Some historians suggest that they were occasionally even consulted for surgery. Think of the implications. The man who dealt death by the sword also wielded a scalpel. The life of a medieval executioner wasn't simply a matter of swinging axes. It was a tapestry woven from threads of death, decay, and surprisingly, a certain level of practical expertise. They were society's designated purveyors of death, yet also, in their own strange way, its unsung fixers and problem solvers. Their legacy is a haunting reminder of the stark realities of medieval life, a life where the boundaries between life, death, and the often blurry space between were handled by one solitary and often misunderstood individual. So, we've journeyed through the grim, the bizarre, and the surprisingly multifaceted life of the medieval executioner. We've seen them not just as agents of death, but as healers, sanitation workers, even, dare I say it, veterinarians. But what about their legacy? What echo did these shadowy figures leave on the tapestry of history? The answer, my friends, is far more complex than a simple, grim reminder of a brutal past. The executioner's role in its very existence reflected the anxieties of medieval society. The public execution wasn't merely a punishment. It was a theatrical performance designed to reinforce social order and the power of the state. The sheer spectacle of it, the crowds, the screams, the blood served as a brutal but effective deterrent. The executioner, the central figure in this macabre drama, became a symbol of both fear and, strangely, a perverse form of authority. Think about it. These individuals held a unique power, a power over life and death. They were the only ones permitted to legally inflict such violence, a stark contrast to the everyday constraints of medieval life. This power, however, came at a heavy price. The social stigma was immense. They were often ostracized, living on the fringes of society, mirroring the very criminals they dispatched. Their families, too, often faced discrimination, inheriting the social taint of their profession. Yet, as we explored, this wasn't always the case. Some executioners, particularly those serving powerful lords or in larger cities, gained a degree of respect, if not acceptance. Their skills, particularly in anatomy and surgery, occasionally made them surprisingly valuable members of the community, a stark contrast to their terrifying public persona. This duality, the juxtaposition of fear and unexpected utility, is perhaps the most fascinating aspect of their legacy. The decline of the executioner's role began gradually with the shift towards more centralized and formalized justice systems. As societies became more complex, the need for a single, highly specialized individual to handle all forms of capital punishment diminished. The rise of professional judges, lawyers, and more organized prisons gradually reduced the executioner's importance. The gruesome public spectacle that was once a cornerstone of social control slowly faded, replaced by more private and less theatrical forms of punishment. However, the executioner's legacy didn't simply vanish. Their story continues to fascinate us because it forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our own history. It compels us to examine the darker aspects of our past, the ways in which societies have dealt with crime and punishment, and the complex social dynamics that shape our understanding of justice. The executioner, that shadowy figure on the scaffold, stands as a twisted mirror reflecting our own anxieties and moral ambiguities. Their story is a cautionary tale, a reminder of the brutal realities of the past, but also a testament to the surprising resilience and adaptability of the human spirit, even in the face of unimaginable grimness. Their story is a paradox, a shadow play of fear and necessity, a chilling reflection of the societies they served. And perhaps that's why their story continues to resonate with us even today. So there you have it. The life of a medieval executioner, a paradox wrapped in grim realities, a chilling reflection of a society grappling with justice, fear, and the macabre. From their surprising medical knowledge, a stark contrast to their bloody profession, to their unexpected side hustles from butchering animals to managing sanitation, their existence was a tapestry woven with threads of both revulsion and necessity. They were outcasts yet integral to the functioning of medieval life, a testament to the complex, often contradictory nature of the era. Their tools, the rituals surrounding death, the public spectacles of punishment all served as brutal but effective mechanisms of social control. But perhaps the most haunting echo of their existence lies not in the gruesome details of their work, but in the enduring questions they raise about our own perceptions of justice and punishment. Were they simply agents of a brutal system, or did they, in their own twisted way, hold a unique position within the fabric of medieval society? Did the societal stigma they faced reflect a deeper societal unease with the concept of state-sanctioned violence, or merely a fear of the individuals tasked with carrying it out? The executioner, after all, was a constant reminder of mortality, a living embodiment of the precariousness of life in a time of plague, war, and instability. They were the ultimate symbol of the dark side of medieval order, A chilling testament to the complexities of human nature and the enduring struggle to define and implement justice. What do you think? Was the executioner simply a cog in a brutal machine or something more? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Grim Histories for more chilling tales from the past.